Ambassador Haqqani worked on the political campaign for an alliance led by Nawaz Sharif. Later he became one of Pakistan's youngest ambassadors. He was a spokesman to Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto. He, for the last few years, has been an associate professor for international relations at Boston University, which is a very interesting place. He's also been co-chair of the Project on Islamic Democracy at the Hudson Institute, which is one of the major think tanks that deals, among other things, with religion issues globally. So we are very honored to have someone. I should just tell you, I've had a slightly different introduction because one of our workers at the International Center, Dave Kirkham, had met Ambassador Jilani at the Marshall Center in Garmisch.
Actually, it was in Turkey.
It was in Turkey, but the actual event was in Turkey, and he's raved about him for many months as someone who is extraordinarily articulate on issues of deep concern to our world today. So it's a great privilege to introduce you. Let me just say, on behalf of the Center, I will give you this small book on faith and law, religious traditions, how they look at law in America. This was done at Pepperdine, but we had a chance to, we did the Mormon chapter, so we'll pass this on to you. We'll be glad to know that there is Muslim chapter as well.
Raise my voice a little bit. Okay. Let me just begin by saying that I always knew of BYU and had at one time even thought about getting my daughter in here. Of course, being the bratty teenager that she was, she turned around and said, I'll give you 2/3 of it, and took BYU and ended up going to NYU. But now that I've come here, I've realized, these guys, all of your faculty and administrators really do work hard, and they work their guests very hard. This is my second speech in about 2 hours. so they make you work for your living. Pakistan is at a particularly interesting threshold right now. Every day you read in the newspapers, you find. By the way, I have a choice for you all. I could give you the boring speech that I have, which is written down here, or I could just speak from my heart, and it might probably prove to be more interesting. So make your pick. Okay. Nobody seems to be in the mood of getting bored anymore. Law will do that to you. So Pakistan is at a particularly interesting threshold. We have had return of democratic government after almost a decade of the strong man rule of General Pervez Musharraf. Musharraf became a household name in the United States. And he became a household name because he decided to side with the United States after 9/11 and provided facilities to the US to be able to take military action in Afghanistan against the Taliban. And Pakistan was also cooperative in finding several of the Al-Qaeda figures that were hanging out in Pakistan and handing them to the United States. So many of them are in Guantanamo today. But that said, Pakistan has often also been spoken of as a place where the terrorists have a safe haven. It has also been spoken of as having vast tracts of territory that the government does not control. It is said to be the place where there is an insurgency going on. It is said to be a home to extremist and radical forms of the Islamic religion. It is said to be a nuclear-armed country that could be a failed state. All of those negative perceptions also exist at the same time. I think that Pakistan will be able to overcome those negative perceptions simply because it has chosen its path as a democracy and as a nation that will pursue the rule of law. You are all familiar with the last 1 year's events, and if you want, I'll just refresh you on them. Pakistan's Supreme Court Chief Justice was removed from office by General Musharraf. And he simply, in the past, military dictators in Pakistan have removed judges from office and they have gone home. This particular judge refused to go. And he said, I am going to make a stand for rule of law. Pakistan's democratic political parties rallied to his cause. People demonstrated in the streets. General Musharraf imposed a state of emergency, which he subsequently had to revoke because there wasn't any support for it even within the military. And he had to hold free and fair election on the 18th of February after the assassination of Benazir Bhutto, who had returned from exile to Pakistan, and with whom I had the pleasure of working very closely and remained a dear friend to. And she basically energized the Pakistani population. And the democratic election resulted in the victory of her political party. And now it's her husband who has become the president of the country, Mr. Aziz Zardari. So Pakistan is now making a transformation from authoritarianism and dictatorship to democracy. And for 60 years, Pakistan has alternated between the two. We have never been able to lay down the firm roots of democracy because of many debates. And the debates have included a debate about the role of faith, of religion in our lives. There are people in Pakistan, as there are in some other Muslim countries, who argue that democracy and Islam are incompatible. They argue that Islam already is a way of life and it has already made laws, and because there is a law, therefore the only function of government is to implement those laws. There is no function for a legislature. I have in my youth had many arguments with religious scholars with that bent of mine on the question of the nature of the relationship between faith and law. And which is why interesting, that this is the book you're giving me, because I've always had this argument that faith is above law. Law can flow from faith, but faith is not law and law is not faith. Legislation still comes from human beings. For example, in the 10 Commandments, the commandment is thou shalt not kill. But if you make that into a law, then what would be the conduct of human beings during war, etc., etc. Making that is law. So faith can be the mainspring of law, but it cannot be law. And that is a debate that has gone on in Pakistan. Is a debate within the Muslim world, and I think in Pakistan we have more or less settled that in favor of the position that I voiced, which is that we will be a democracy, that we will have a system of governance in which the faith will be respected, and there will be no legislation that actually actively contradicts faith, but basically the laws will be made by Parliament, by the legislature. Now, that is the first transformation in Pakistan. There are other transformations taking place. Pakistan hopes that it can change its population away from the more radical and anti-Western interpretations of Islam to more pragmatic approaches that would allow Pakistan to be at crossroads of faith and modernity. And Pakistan has an outstanding dispute with India, out of which it was carved, and there is also a desire to resolve problems with India so that we can move forward. And we can move forward as partners in which Pakistan can take advantage of the opportunities presented by India's massive economic growth, rather than to be constantly pulled down by a desire to fight and argue with India. And then there is the war in Afghanistan, which Pakistan now, in the last 2 months in particular, and I have had something to do with it, the details, Pakistan has become very active in making sure that Al-Qaeda and the Taliban are actually fought militarily, politically, and with a socio-economic initiative that will enable Pakistan's poor to have a life and a future that will not make them look at the Talibanization of their lifestyle as the only future for themselves. Because so there's a major ideological battle going on in Pakistan, intellectual battle, on the nature of law, on the nature of politics, on the nature of the political system, as well as on what should be our future. Do the Taliban and Al-Qaeda represent our future? And in the election, the people totally rejected all political groups that had even the slightest connection with the Taliban and their way of life. They voted for people. They voted for Benazir Bhutto, first of all, a woman, whereas the Taliban would want all women to be put in burqas and not have any public role. She was a woman who covered her head in accordance with her religion, prayed 5 times a day, observed the Ramadan fast, but yet had the courage to stand and lead both men and women, and voiced the notion of equality of men and women, and wrote a book. Just 2 days before her assassination, she sent me the final chapter of that book by email saying, I've completed this book, make sure that it gets published in case I'm not there. which was unusual. In case I'm not there in a few days, and then that book has now been published. It's called Reconciliation, Islam, Democracy and the West. And it was published posthumously soon after her assassination. So, under this leadership, what does Pakistan hope to accomplish? Well, first of all, there are certain problems within Pakistan which are not unique to Pakistan, they are common to the Muslim world. Look, there are more than 1 billion Muslims in the world. And yet, if you look at statistics, you will find almost half of them are illiterate. The Muslim world with 1 billion people has only 500 universities. The United States alone has more than 600. The number of books that are published in the Arabic language every year, and Arabic is the language of 300 million people. The first language of 300 million people, and the second language of another 300, 400 million people around the Muslim world. Yes, the number of books published in the Arabic language every year, new titles, is less than most of the European nations, including Greece, whose population is barely 12 to 13 million people. So there's an intellectual crisis in the Muslim world, there's an economic crisis in the Muslim world. After all, the combined GDP of 57 Muslim members of the Organization of Islamic Conference is less than the GDP of France. This, despite the fact that God has blessed many Muslim countries with natural resources like oil and gas. What's going on here? What's wrong? And of course, there's a total. I have a whole theory on it. I have a book coming out on it. So I'll try and come back around that time. That way, all of you are going to be nice guys, and you're all going to buy the book. But that's because that's a big picture problem in the Muslim world, and the big picture problem in the Muslim world is that the Muslims who were, if there had been Nobel Prizes in 1008, Muslims would have won them all. The Muslims were the most progressive, the most developed, the most successful. They had empires, they had militaries, they had scientific innovation and invention, etc., etc. But then there's been a long period of Muslim decline. And instead of addressing the decline by looking inward, the Muslims have always looked outward. It's somebody else's fault. Colonialism, the West came in, colonized us, our rulers are bad, America dominates the world, that's the problem, etc., etc. Truth is, you haven't built universities, something's wrong there. You haven't educated your kids, something's wrong there. You haven't invented anything lately, something's wrong there. So granddad must have invented something, but hey, the patents run out, and so the Muslim world's crisis, and Pakistan is a microcosm of all that. Why? Because in modern times, Pakistan is the first country whose birth is directly related to the notion of faith. Because when the Middle East was carved out by Mr. Sykes-Picot, I hope everybody knows about that, that was an arbitrary decision. It wasn't like based on any faith-related consideration, etc., etc. Pakistan, on the other hand, was the result of a campaign by the Muslims of the Indian subcontinent, Indo-Pakistan subcontinent, South Asian subcontinent, that demanded that when the British leave the subcontinent, they should leave the Muslim majority areas as a separate country so that we do not become a permanent religious minority in a larger country which will be subsumed by others. And so that made a big difference. And the consequence of that is that when Pakistan was the first country to call itself the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. The faith mattered. And Pakistan's first legislature, the first piece of legislation they agreed upon was the objectives resolution. The objectives of Pakistan's constitution and law. And that was, we will try and make our state conform to our Islamic tradition. So Islam has had a very significant role. And many countries in the Arab world during the 40s and 50s, well into the 60s, wanted just to be nothing but poor imitations of the West. They all wanted to be, secular and nationalist, and they did, and there was a general tendency all the way back to some of the greatest leaders, Bourguiba in Tunisia, Nasser in Egypt. He didn't want the role of religion in the public square. Pakistan did. So therefore, that is why all of these guys from everywhere, Osama bin Laden from Saudi Arabia, what's he doing in Pakistan, or allegedly doing in Pakistan? They all thought this is the country where we can find a home, because this country allows a public role for religion in the public sphere. And so we can come and organize it. But that has now reached a point where all kinds of radical terrorist and militant movements have converged, and the new elected government of Pakistan wants to take on them. You want to take on them militarily, because you can't, some people you can't reason with. You want to take on them politically by arguing out those people and marginalizing them. We already have the mandate of the people. There's an election held. People voted for us who didn't want this particular way of life, who want a modern way of life with faith rather than faith as an alternative to modern way of life. And so this is an important moment in Pakistan's history. Pakistan's relationship with the United States is also undergoing an important change. The US has also had, other than, there's a saying in Pakistan that there are 3 A's that matter in Pakistan: Allah, Army, and America. And that saying has a perspective. The perspective is that when Pakistan was created, Pakistan didn't have economic resources. Pakistan was geographically, I wish I had a map, I would have shown it to you so that you could all try and visualize a map, and those of you who have computers in front of you, Google, find a map, you will find Pakistan is strategically very interestingly located. It is the crossroads of the Middle East, bordering Iran and the Gulf countries, all right across from it in the sea. Central Asia, which is Afghanistan and beyond, all the stans as they are called in the former Soviet Union, oil-rich, gas-rich, and then India, and then China to the north. Visualize this. What are the 2 fastest growing economies in the world? China and India. We sit at the crossroads. What is the most important commodity in the world right now? Oil. How is oil going to go to India? If there's going to be pipelines, they have to run through Pakistan. If there's going to be gas pipelines from Iran, Iran has a lot of natural gas, and if they want to export it, how do they export it? They build a pipeline through Pakistan to India, or a pipeline through Pakistan to China. Those are the 2 countries that are the bigger consumers. There's only 2 countries that may soon outrun the United States in the appetite for burning gas. You thought you got guys with your gas guzzling SUVs had it. That's an advantage you're about. Advantage, disadvantage, you're about to lose, thank God. The Chinese and the Indians are going to consume more energy in relative terms. Their consumption is increasing so fast. And so they lead all of that. And Pakistan sits at the crossroads. So Pakistan's location is a blessing in some ways. But soon after independence, Pakistan's leaders thought this strategic advantage makes us a natural ally of the United States. Why? Because remember what was happening. Anybody old enough to remember what was happening in 1948? That's a joke. 1948, President Truman, just re-elected, is now thinking about containment. Containment of an expansive Soviet Union. The assumption being that the Soviet Union wants to expand and is going to pursue an expansionist ideology. You need to create a ring around the Soviet Union. How are you going to create a ring around the Soviet Union? Well, on the one hand, you have NATO in the West. On the other hand, you try and make sure that Chiang Kai-shek wins in China. Didn't work, but that was the idea. Communists don't get control of China on the other end. And then create what was known as the southern tier of countries where there would be, so Iran, Pakistan, even India. The Indians weren't coming on board. The Indians said, we're going to be non-aligned, which certain leaders of the United States couldn't understand. They said, what's non-alignment? We know there's neutrality and there's alignment. What's non-alignment? Which is, we are not neutral, but we are not allied to you. We're going to choose on an issue-by-issue basis, and the US didn't like that during that period. So Pakistan became a natural ally of the United States. Pakistan became part of the Central Treaty Organization, the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. In those days, Pakistan had 2 wings, East Pakistan, which is today Bangladesh, and West Pakistan, which is today the remainder of Pakistan. And so Pakistan became a Cold War player. But here was the problem. While Pakistan was willing to offer its services to the Americans for espionage against the Soviets, etc., etc., Pakistanis wanted the Americans to help them against India. And that was something America wasn't willing to do. And so it became a constant source of stress and strain between Pakistan and the United States. If you want to understand why Pakistan and the United States have gone like a yo-yo, very close allies in the 50s until the mid-60s, then period of estrangement. Then allies again against the Soviets in Afghanistan. Remember the war in Afghanistan? Anybody seen the movie Charlie Wilson's War? Okay, well, it wasn't Charlie Wilson's war, by the way. It was really the Afghan people's war, you know. And like all movies, I mean, and Charlie Wilson, who I know very well and I've known very well, I wasn't half as good looking as Tom Hanks. or half as pleasant. But that whole war brought the United States and Pakistan together again. But then after the war, there was estrangement again. Why? Because Pakistan insisted that we want to make Afghanistan into a bastion of support for Pakistan so that the Indians cannot have any influence in Afghanistan. Why would the Indians not want to have influence in Afghanistan? It's a natural, it's a country right. Okay, the Indians would want Pakistan, Afghanistan, all of it to be their sphere of influence because India is a larger country. And so this little problem kept going back and forth, and we ended up having a yo-yo relationship in which we would have 10 years of friendship or 5 years of friendship and 5 years of estrangement, and it was like, you know, more like a difficult marriage, or rather a difficult relationship in which the marriage was never consummated. You were going out and you weren't because she had a bad temper, and then a few days later, he's being bad and and whatever, and then but you need each other. Now Pakistan and the United States have agreed to be not just these short-term allies, but strategic partners. And why is that strategic partnership important? Will somebody just raise their hand and let me know when you want me to stop so that I can ask people to come in if I've gone too far? I'm bad at time management when I'm talking. I like to talk. And so here are the things that bring make Pakistan and the United States strategic partners. Number one, the war against terror, which by the way is not going to be over in 2 years, 6 months, or 6 years. It's a war against an idea. The idea being that some people think that they can break up or cause damage to the West through terrorism and create enough of a problem in the West to undermine Western civilization and society. That idea, as long as it has takers, will keep on manifesting itself in one form or another. Then there is the injustices that the Muslim world faces, whether it's the Palestinian issue, whether it's the Kashmir issue in Pakistan, in the case of India, the Muslims feel, or whether it's just the craziness that went on after 9/11, when some people in this country kind of forgot their own moorings and started turning and saying, let's go grab all these Muslims and all that, which also didn't please many people back in the Muslim world. And that's a very diplomatic way of putting it. So, all of that has, and the United States takes part of it. So the war against terror is one area where Pakistan and the United States have to cooperate. There is no way Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda can be finished off without Pakistani cooperation. And Pakistan and the United States have now made the decision that they will do it together. And they are doing it together. I'm pleased to report that even last night, a significant Al-Qaeda leader was dispatched to the hereafter through cooperation between Pakistan and the United States. So that's positive. At the same time, making it possible for Afghanistan and Pakistan and India all to work together. And to enable the United States to get maximum benefit from trade with China, trade with India, through Pakistan, rather than constantly holding its head and saying, how do we make these two work together? That's the next part. That's what's there. But the US also needs Pakistan for the transformation of the Muslim world, of the modernization of the Muslim world. Pakistan is already the only Muslim majority country with nuclear weapons. So it has a kind of a natural leadership in a military sense. Pakistan has the world's fifth largest army. Pakistan has the highest number of scientists in the Muslim world. And also the highest number of lawyers, but I don't think that's something to brag about. So Pakistan has a significant position. And if Pakistan can be, and Pakistan is voluntarily trying to become a pluralist, democratic country based on rule of law, embracing the idea of reconciliation and pluralism. And that in itself is a positive thing. Pakistan can play a key role in making the rest of the Muslim world also realize that you can, you go to Pakistan, you will find mosques full of people doing the daily 5-time prayer. You will find people very personally pious and religious. And so if a country like that, with people like myself, who personally are practicing, it's not an either or then you say, you know what, you can be modern and successful, and you can be a lawyer and a scientist and everything, which is basically answering a lot of the questions that tear apart the Muslim world these days. Because what is the real tearing apart in the Muslim world? The real tearing apart is, will we end up giving up our faith if we become modern? Is modernity something that will take away our faith? Will success in this world lead to our disaster in the hereafter? Muslims in their 5 times daily prayer, actually, one of the prayers we say is, in Arabic, it is Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana. O Lord, O our sustainer, give us the best of this world and then give us the best of the hereafter. Very interesting notion in faith. Want the best. And now, when people say, you know what, I'm going to blow myself up in this world to get a better life in the hereafter, he's only going for half of it. He can have the whole thing, but he won't have it. He'll just have half. And that notion is flawed for that reason. So Pakistan as a nation has a leading role to play, and the United States and Pakistan intend this time not to go like a yo-yo, but to build multi-dimensional relationship, bilateral investment treaties, reconstruction opportunity zones whereby the US companies will be able to invest in the backward areas of Pakistan and Afghanistan, so that people, instead of learning to make improvised electronic devices, end up making underwear to sell at Walmart. By the way, that's not a joke. You see, to get Congress to support it, that's what I did. I got them to make boxer shorts, saying this is the way to fight Osama bin Laden. You see, if you allow Walmart to establish a production facility in that tribal area and train these young kids, give them education and train them how to make these boxer shorts, they don't need to go and get a job with Al-Qaeda or the Taliban and blow themselves up. Not a bad idea, as ideas go. And so those are the things on which Pakistan and the US are working strategically. There is bipartisan support in Washington for a strategic partnership with Pakistan. Yes, there are concerns about certain things that have happened in the past. Pakistan broke its promises with the US when it developed nuclear weapons. Pakistan, and there are elements in Pakistan that have been supportive of the Taliban in the past, and all of that is cause for concern. But I think that the desire of Pakistan's leadership, and to a large extent also a large segment of Pakistan's population, to work with the United States for the betterment of our own people is great, and I look forward to this partnership emerging over the next decade. In fact, getting strengthened over the next decade or so. So I'm going to stop here, have a sip of water, and take questions.
Very grateful to the ambassador. I can just pass the mic to anyone who has questions.
Hello, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Taimur Gilani from Islamabad, Pakistan. And my question for you is that President-elect Obama said that he wants to bring troops into Afghanistan and parts of Pakistan. How will that sit with, one, the government of Pakistan, secondly, with the people of Pakistan? And how, if any, how will it affect the relationship between Pakistan and the United States?
When we are from Pakistan, you know that Pakistanis are a proud people. We are also proud of the fact that we have the 5th largest army in the world. And very frankly, Pakistan would like to take care of its side of the border itself. President Obama, by the way, may have said that, but he fully understands. I have spoken to him on the matter myself. I do not see large numbers of American troops landing in Pakistan anytime soon. In fact, there are no large number of American troops available for landing anywhere. So as far as Afghanistan is concerned, Afghanistan will need a little more military presence from the United States and from other countries in NATO, possibly Turkey and others. For the simple reason that Afghanistan did not have a standing army, if you remember, after the Taliban's collapse. So they are building the army from scratch. Pakistan has an army. And all we need is to retrain certain parts of our army for counterinsurgency operations, make sure that American and Pakistani cooperation is worked out in a way in which American technological advantages such as the Predator can be utilized effectively. And we can surgically remove, because you know that in Pakistan, while there are moments when people get swept up in anti-American emotion and sentiment, by and large there is no desire on the part of the average Pakistani to support terrorists. And so I think that we can take care of this for ourselves as partners of the United States. I don't think that the United States will need to or needs to anyway to send large number of troops to Pakistan. Most of those statements were, in an election campaign, everybody has to outdo the other. Since Senator McCain was saying that, both were agreeing on one thing. The agreement was that we need to fight Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda and take them out and finish off the Taliban. And so one said, but we'll do it with the help of Pakistan. So the other had to say, with the help of Pakistan, and if Pakistan doesn't help, we are going to do it ourselves. But, things are said in elections. Never believe all the promises that a young man makes during courtship. Young ladies, beware. and never believe everything that a politician says. Yes.
Is there a possibility that Pakistan's army could help with the situation in Afghanistan, or would that just destabilize the region?
You have to understand, I didn't want this to become another long history lesson. One of my first observations after I came to the United States the first time was that Americans and we have a very different outlook on history. In America, when you want to be dismissive about someone, you say, Jack is history. And in our part of the world, you start understanding everything with, tell me the history of this before you can come around to understanding why it's happening now. So I'm going to do a shortcut here. You see, Pakistan was carved out of British India. And so therefore there are a lot of residual issues. One of which is the Pakistan-Afghan border. Because in 1893, a man called Sir Mortimer Durand drew this line on a map and divided tribes that were otherwise, like the same tribe and all that. And then there was a time when Afghanistan used to say Pakistan should give up this territory to us and all that. So therefore, both Pakistan and Afghanistan are sensitive about each other. That said, we are now working much more closely than we've ever done in the last 60 years. President Karzai attended the inauguration of President Zardari. I was with them together in New York last week. They were both talking to each other and sort of sitting together, sort of calling each other brother, and our intelligence services are working together. So I think we can work together without large numbers of Pakistani troops being in Afghanistan or Afghans being in Pakistan. But there are mechanisms to work all of that out. And the important thing is that in General David Petraeus, the US now has a very good commander with some experience of counterinsurgency and very good success from Iraq, who's coming to Afghanistan and Pakistan and dealing with it. And he took over as CENTCOM commander on the 31st of October and ended up being in Islamabad on the 2nd of November. So you can understand how important he considers this. And he understands, and he and I have met several times, and he understands the need for cooperation between Pakistan and Afghanistan. I think it has to be a trilateral cooperation. Pakistan, Afghanistan and the United States. The United States being the big muscular global power, Pakistan being the significant regional player, and Afghanistan. And then we need to bring in other regional players to make Afghanistan stable, develop its economy, provide it the military that it needs for its own internal security, develop law enforcement in Afghanistan, develop Pakistan's law enforcement. Pakistan's own policing, etc., has leaves a lot to be desired, and we need to work on all of that. So I think, but I don't think it's good to induct troops from one side into the other. But Pakistan, by the way, these last 2-3 days, I've been very happy with the reports. NATO's been reporting about how they've been doing up what we would call a hammer and anvil approach, that NATO fights these guys and they push them into Pakistan, and the Pakistanis are forewarned and told these guys are crossing into your border, now you beat up on them, and vice versa. And if that can be done, then these guys will actually be trapped, because until now they've taken advantage of, they're on one side of the border, and then when they're chased, they go on to the other side, and therefore they take advantage of it. That's what has made Al-Qaeda and the Taliban survive over the recent past. I think this will be significant. Yes, sir.
Hello, Your Excellency. My name is Seth Diggs. I'm a second year law student here. Forgive me if I ask sort of a specific question, something to do with what I'm studying, but when you talked about Pakistan and the U.S., you need to have a strategic alliance, and some questions have been asked about troops, U.S. troops there in Afghanistan and situations in Pakistan. I think some of the things that have been in the news lately specifically have been, I don't know if we could say incursions, but movements of U.S. military across the border, whether with the Predator or maybe sometimes with helicopters, and then there have been some talk of Pakistani army retaliation saying, this is the border and please don't come across in that sense. I guess my specific question is, what is the feeling with the border integrity there? Speaking of this alliance, is it one where work with us and we'll set the terms with what happens? And is there what's I guess the sort of articulation the feeling towards this thing going on with the border?
There was only one serious incursion, and that was on the 3rd of September 2008. General Musharraf was still president, but he had been impeached, and we were going to elect a new president on the 6th of September. A U.S. Special Operations team arrived in Pakistan, didn't get anybody from Al-Qaeda or the Taliban, came and conducted an operation in Iraq. We protested vehemently because A, it didn't sit well with our population, B, it didn't accomplish anything, and C, it was without our permission, which meant it was a violation of our sovereignty. After President Zardari's election, we have worked out the details. There has been no incursion. The Predator is a different thing. The Predator is A, not used by the US military in this particular instance. And I'll just stop at that. Beyond that, the answer is classified. So on the Predator, we do not appreciate its indiscriminate use, but it does not constitute a violation of our sovereignty the same way as the induction of American troops on our side of the border. Other than that, I think we now are in the process of creating a joint operations structure, and once that is in place, then basically there will be a kind of integrated command without necessarily being one commander, if you understand what I'm talking about. Thank you.
We can take one or two
We
more
can take
questions.
2 or 3 more questions?
Yeah.
2. Okay.
How do you think the change in administration from the Bush administration to now President-elect Obama will change the foreign relations with specifically Pakistan, but also the Muslim world in general?
First of all, I'm an ambassador. You know what the diplomats are described as? Diplomats are people who, if they tell you to go to hell, they start making you look forward to the trip. If you think I am, at the beginning of this administration, going to say something that will make it difficult for me tomorrow to negotiate with these guys, you're a mistake. But here's the thing. I think on national security, usually the transition is a lot softer than it is on domestic issues. And I think that, as I see it, a lot of people from the Obama camp and a lot of people from the Bush administration are already working on, because you see, the problem is, when you're in administration and in government, you have information that those out of government do not have. If you think you're reading the newspaper and you've got the same information that the President of the United States has, or the National Security Advisor has, or the Ambassador of Pakistan to the United States has, you're sadly mistaken. There's a lot more detail to it. And once that detail is shared with the incoming administration, they often review the positions that they had publicly articulated before, because you know what? In international relations, the options are not endless. There are very few options in certain cases. Here's Kim Jong-il, this is how he thinks, this is what it is, this is how he controls North Korea. What can we do? So it's not like there are endless options in foreign policy. So the way I see it is that one thing that President Obama will have an advantage over President Bush is that he comes with a relatively clean slate. President Bush, unfortunately, has been made the butt of jokes, of comments, has been painted a certain way in the Muslim world. He's been associated with the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, Guantanamo, the Patriot Act and its abuse rather than just the justifiable use of it, unnecessary checks on Muslims who are American citizens, things like that. All of that has created a negative perception, which I do not endorse as correct. I'm just saying it's the perception. President Obama comes without that. So he has a window of opportunity now. I don't know if you saw Ayman al-Zawahiri's statement, Al-Qaeda's number 2. He's already started tarring because these guys, the hardliners, the Al-Qaeda types, they aren't going to spare Obama either. They've already started abusing him. But the point is that the vast mass of Muslims in the world would like, their criticism of the US will soften for a while. And if we can effect something, if the US can move in the right direction in a Palestinian settlement and be seen as being a little bit more fair and even-handed in that situation, work with other Muslim countries, make sure that in Afghanistan civilian casualties can be kept low, the development pace picks up. Little things sometimes hold up big things. I mean, for example, the Americans have not yet been able to figure out a contracting mechanism whereby the pace of development in Afghanistan. Here are guys who have not gone to school. One class, they have to fill 25 forms to get a fountain of water in their village. You think they're going to fill 25 forms? They're not. So there are all these complications which have to be overcome so that the American there's a feel good about America. Just to give you an example, Pakistan had an earthquake in 2005. Before the earthquake, America, when people were asked the question in opinion poll, do you like the United States or dislike? Only 18% of Pakistanis said they liked the United States. 18, 1-8. When the earthquake came, I was a professor at that time, but I went to everybody I knew in the administration. I said, you know what, start a massive relief program and do it directly. Send Americans to do it. Stop worrying about security. No one's going to kill a guy who's bringing food and medicine to the earthquake victim. Just show up. And so there was a massive operation which involved American Marines arriving with helicopters, rescuing babies, etc. And I said, make sure that you take a television crew every now and then. And they did it. Guess what? A month later, same poll, 48% of people liked the United States. 20% somewhat like the United States. Big change. Much better than 18. And so I think that there is an advantage there. Now let me just make a concluding kind of comment. The United States is a blessed country. It has one of the most significant political systems that has given to the world the idea of liberty, the concept of democracy. It has it is the world's biggest economic power, biggest military power, and a very proud country. But there are some problems here as well. Only 20% of Americans ever apply for passports. Many people don't, because America is protected on both sides of the ocean. You really don't need. I mean, you want to go somewhere nice, you go to the Grand Canyon. You want to ski, you come somewhere here, or go to Colorado, you want to go to the desert, there's desert here, you want to go to see greenery, you want to see decadence, everything available. So people don't travel, and as a result, there's a kind of an assumption that just because we are well-intentioned, the whole world will understand our good intentions. It doesn't work that way. The US has to engage. So President Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, they understood that. President Johnson got bogged down with Vietnam, and that messed everything up. President Nixon got pulled down by Watergate. But then, in the last few years, there have been a little mistakes in terms of being able to deal with the world and give the message. I think that if President Obama is able to give a good message to the world and say, you know what, it's never good. Look, if I told you you're not important to me at all, would you even bother to listen to me? you have to be able to engage, you have to make the other person feel important. So yes, the United States can go it alone. But you know, we had a UN ambassador who was a friend of mine, by the way, and I used to say to him, America had a UN ambassador, who used to say the UN doesn't matter because America can alone achieve anything in the world and all that. But that's a way of being dismissive and saying, you know, you guys, I don't really need to talk to you, and I was talking to you, doing you a favor. That's an insult. So we have to learn, the United States has to learn how to communicate with the world, and that's all that's important.